Right. Hi, guys. Back for episode 23 of Wolf Past Echoes Like Gray here. Where we left off, some big developments. We learned that this big Hogwarts style building, this big mansion temple, belongs to someone called the Master. And Wholf is now speaking to a servant of the master, though the servant is a spirit wandering bound to the area. So the servant's name was Torgo. Those two character names are based on an old show, Mystery Science Theater 3000, an episode where they make fun of a bad movie called Manos Hands of Fate. Anyways, that is what Hulf has been doing this entire time. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Jory found out most likely where Wholf is. So he's going to be going in full force. We'll figure it out if it's going to be aggressive or in character, as Jory is trustworthy companion in arms. Now, one thing I am failing to develop here is why is Jory seeking? Uh, why is he trying to find Wholf? Even though Jory probably could have made it an offensive move on the archivals when he was in their actual base of operations beneath the library in Haldreth. Why didn't he attack? Why didn't he steal anything? Here's what I'm trying to figure out. Not just a why, but what exactly is he looking for? I think remaining in character as Jory, he's trying to use this connection with Wholf as a way to perhaps steal something, not just an item from uh, Wholf, but his own lineage. I believe Jory has something on him that will allow him to steal the life force or essence of Wholf. And that has to do with the village of Ashford. Because, as we remember, when they were in the chamber, they were in the vault, things didn't go as planned for Jory. Wholf found a mirror that only Wholf saw. Then he stepped through it and he appeared in this temple of dragon, which then suddenly Jory got teleported away back into the surface. So without Wholf there as the anchor for whatever dark force Wholf has some unintentional control of or influence on, Wholf has to be there in order for the chamber, the hatch, and then the vault to exist in that temporal plane, in their reality. So Jory needs to find Wholf to get back to Ashford because again they got sidetracked, they got teleported away, and Jory used the archives to find where Wholf was. He probably could have went through some other means to find Jory, but I was happy to go visit Haldreth again. Such a big city. We haven't really explored it much besides a chase through the alleyways and the entrance and the library, the console. But Haldreth, I'm assuming is going to be a very big city, it's fortified, so there's going to be a lot to explore. So, future episodes could take place in this being the southern, well, so far, based on the map here, let me show you guys, the largest area, the largest settlement in the southern Escobar Islands. So that will be some fun in the future. Now, back to Jory. Let's focus on him on the first half of this episode, then we'll jump over to Wholf. So we now, based on what I just said, we're going to assume that Jory needs Wholf in order to revisit the vault. So let's write that down. This will be a star. Basically, Jory needs Wholf for the vault. And as you can see here, it says Jory knows where Wholf is. Now, does Jory have knowledge about, does he know much about this Temple of Dragon? Well, could be a role, but he's not a character yet, or he's not a player character. He's just an NPC. Jory is probably as old as Edwin was. I'm going to assume. Probably I dropped the ball on that. Maybe I mentioned his age earlier in this series, but that's just based on his experiences and how wise he may be. And as a leader of an organization that's on the evil side of the spectrum. So I'm going to assume Jory is on the experience side. So he probably does have knowledge about the Temple Dragon and the past between the Temple Dragon and his region. We haven't learned yet if the Temple Dragon is still fully intact, if it still has the master there, if the master is still around, we don't know. There is a 30-year gap between the events of the village, the destruction of Ashford, and the appearance of the dragon. We can say that. In lore news, we know the dragon has not been sighted for 30 years. And Wholf is possibly the first person to stumble upon or appear in the Temple of Dragon since the attack. Maybe. Again, it's just I'm just kind of developing a foundation for that gap in history. So Jory is going to reconvene. He's going to meet up with his team, his scouts that he was with prior to heading back to Holland. So the scouts from the Arcane, they're going to meet up again outside of Aldworth, somewhere in the distance so it doesn't draw suspicion. So Jory is with Arcane scouts. And these guys are basically going to take post and go up further ahead to do their job and scout. Now, they know where they're going, so let's go to the map here. They're basically going to be, there we go. They're going to be traveling from here all the way to finding a route to Haldrith, to the Temple of Dragon. So we're leaving Haldrith and we're traveling to the Temple of Dragon. Now, this will require a pencil, and we're going to pull the map out because now we're basically going to show that our team here is Jory is traveling just the normal route that was heading on the way to Ashford. But let's say there's a turn here that goes south, right for the grasslands, and then ends here, just off camera, or off from the fog of war. We have grasslands, and then let's say there start to be hills here near the waters, and then mountains. The Temple of Dragon is in a mountainous terrain, which explains why in the last episode or prior that Wholf was overlooking a cliffside similar to Ireland, where there's these vast cliffs of green on the ocean side, on the beach. So that's kind of what I'm thinking the appearance of would be for the Temple of Dragon. So there's our route. We have hills and then kind of transition to mountains. And so he'll have to take a path up the way up to the Temple of Dragon. So back to me. As they travel, they will encounter something. Now, this hasn't been a traditional hex crawl. We haven't been, we don't do rolls for the day check, nighttime check, like taking, shifts and as a team we set up camp. We're not really doing that. This is very focused on narrative, as is its fate. So let's see, between Haldrith and the Temple of Dragon, let's see what happens. This is completely random. We're going to use our spine here, the discovery meeting, and roll first for actions. 42, that's going to be environment. That's perfect. So it is the environment itself. And 3, bleak. Something, oh no, I'm sorry. 3 is beautiful. Huh. Let's let's re-roll that. I want something to be a little more chaotic. Disagreeable. Okay, so an environment disagreeable. How does that go into play for Jory and his scouts? An environment disagreeable. Okay, so while they're traversing the land, they approach possibly a trail that leads up to the Temple of Dragon. Now, let's say there is a large canyon of sorts that has a known trail, but it's extremely dangerous. The scouts are well aware of this area, perhaps. Maybe they've been through here before, they passed by a beer run of sorts. But basically, the environmental disagreement, as we rolled with 24, is that the scouts are advising Jory not to proceed, or if they do, they need backup. Because they tell him that this area is known to be surrounded by death, as is rumored in legend. This area is completely dangerous, and anybody who has crossed here has never come back alive. Um, which makes sense because I assume the tiles surrounding the Temple of Dragon are dangerous. This is a sinister tyrant, the Master, that most likely has safeguards or traps established across the canyon. As again, Jory is looking at this large, overgrown gate of sorts, like a mansion gate that has foliage, plants, plants growing over it. It's never been opened in 20, 30 years. So one of the scouts tells Jory that this appears to be the Temple of Dragon, as we predicted. This gate goes right to the play. It's just anybody who's ever entered here has never come back alive. Jory, I think Jory dismisses it. He says, no, we need to find Wholf. We need him for the vault. We need his essence. So he says the keyword essence, which sounds a bit wrong, but that's essentially what he does. Maybe he needs his blood. There's a potential plot device. He needs Wholf's blood. And if we jump back a few episodes, when they were in the vault, Joy was going to do something like with a knife or some kind of dagger of sorts and stab Wholf with the knife and do some kind of ritual magic to unveil or reveal maybe some treasure of sorts, the mirror perhaps. I like how that's working out. But anyways, they need Wholf, and Wholf is currently in the Temple of Dragon, preoccupied speaking to Torga. So Jory says, no, we're going to cross this door or this gate. A simple gate's not going to stop me. We need to figure out, we need to do a morality check. This is not part of the fate rules. This is something just going to be a simple D6, 2d6 roll using the powered by the Apocalypse House roll, house hack that I've been doing for the system so far. And basically, these are the efforts of Jory's team. Jory is confident to proceed on without their help. But this roll is specifically for, let's use our red die actually to represent that they are technically enemies. So this roll is specifically um, for Jory's scouts. They are afraid. I won't roll this. Oh, okay. So morale check is perfect. Okay, so they all gather up with Jory and they formulate a plan. They said, okay, boss, if you're going in, we're going to stick behind you. But we've advised you, we have no other choice. They are loyal. Their loyalty is unquestionable. Unquestionable. They pledge the loyalty. They say, we will stand behind you, sir, whatever you decide. But we have forewarned you of the potential risk here. Jory, again, let's proceed on. So they formulate a plan, a strategy to proceed in. Let's just say they formulate a plan. It involves maybe going on the edges of the trail. Perhaps Jory walks into the front. He's the most powerful of the group, so perhaps he can take on any certain beast or any threat that appears in front of him. So he uses his staff to open the gate. The gate starts to creak open. The plants and the vines, that's something, the vines snap as it approaches, and there's this gust of air, which is strange because it's just the gate, but this gust of air comes out. And Joy and his scouts behind him, maybe a couple of members of the scouts in front of him, venture forward. And as they proceed into the Temple of Dragon's territory, let's roll to see what happens. So, as they proceed in, let's write down that they are entering the Temple of Dragon. entering the Temple of Dragon territory through the gate. Just a small notes here. There we go. All right, 53, 57 is our first roll for harm. Okay, so 6, bleak. For the most part, the dice have been talking recently. So harm and bleak. It does not look good. Something attacks them. A troll. A large, giant, dead troll emerges from its carcass off to the side. It appears to be like a slumber, like it was in slumber, or it pops out of a cave. A giant troll with a huge mallet or a huge piece of a weapon of sorts, a blunt weapon, this giant weapon, and it starts attacking the scouts. It pops out of nowhere, and the scouts start using their arrows. There's a fight breaks out, combat. Arrows are flying. Some scouts are trying to step behind. The troll takes one of the scouts and flings him across the canyon, hitting the wall, killing him instantly. Jory uses his magic to try to maybe attack the troll, the giant troll. With a some kind of magic missile spell. Let's write down that it's fighting at the moment a troll. But this troll is dead. So it's animated. Someone is controlling this troll. Jory instantly knows that. As he's attacking, you see the troll is like part of his body is open. Like there's you see his insides, but there's like some leftover flesh and one eyeball sticking out. So this troll is obviously dead, but or the eye itself. Um, but it's still, moving and striking and attacking and roaring. And so Jory is going to let his scouts gang up on it. There's a few more scouts left over, and the troll swings his giant weapon and hits a few of them. But the troll does eventually succumb to the pain, or succumbs to the overpowering of Jory's magic. Now let's roll for this. This will be 2 rolls against. In this instance, Jory will be blue. Red's the troll. This is basically a roll against a roll. I'm going to give the advantage to Jory because the scouts have done a number on the troll. And basically, the 2 highest will go against the standard roll of the troll. I'm sorry, I rolled it completely wrong. Well, you know what? Let's just stick with it. Blue will be the troll. Red is going to be the Jory. So my mistake, but I'm going to roll with it. 7 against 11. So clearly the troll is defeated. He crumbles apart into just bodies of flesh, pieces of bone, and etc. He's defeated. So troll's defeated, and a couple of scouts have died. Maybe he has a few left, maybe 3 or 2 scouts left, and they clean themselves off. And then the one scout says that if that troll right there, Jory interrupts, says that was not a troll. That was an animated. That was magic right there. So Jory says that there's someone that was either a preventive trap that was triggered by one of us magically. It's some kind of territorial trigger in the vicinity, and it awakened, it animated the corpse of the troll. So they have to be wary of what they encounter going up this trail to the Temple of Dragon. So let's say some time passes. Let's do a slight time jump. They encounter a few other things like a large dead spider, a trap that like killed one of them with the spikes. Jory is he's completely ready for anything, so he's most likely been avoiding all these traps until they get to the Temple of Dungeon. But there is a vast chasm, a moat with nothing in it. Well, maybe the moat does have something. So let's figure that out. Okay, so the Temple of Dragon has a moat. I don't spell that wrong. With a drawbridge, and obviously the portcullis is most likely going to be up or closed. So the drawbridge is up, and the moat is filled with. Let's figure that out. Could be anything. Let's roll with our dice here. 2 descriptors. 100, which is warm. Okay, of course. What's warm? Hot. It's lava. So okay, the moat has just lava surrounding it. It's boiling lava, and it's just the bubbles occasionally pop, and the drawbridge is up. So maybe Joy can just use a spell to pull down the drawbridge. But we're going to jump to Wholf. So that's all for that's the first 20 minutes of this episode for Joy. He had his part, he had his screen time. They went from Haldrith to essentially the moat of the Temple Dragon. So Mr. Wholf, he is dealing with his own potential issue. We're going to a little arrow here to connect the two. These are the same episodes. Now, where we left off, he's talking to Torgo. So he goes back inside the main chamber, the main like large dining hall, some kind of theater sorts, an auditorium, something like that. Large hall. And the dragon, he walks back inside. He looks at the dragon, and he again sees the dragon is still there. The statue didn't move. It's just looking at him as Wholf walks back into his prior position. Now the Torgo enters, and he has the gardening tool, and he looks up at the dragon too. And he stands next to Wholf. So let's write that down. Torgo is kind of just accompanying him at the moment, next to the dragon statue. This might be a slight retcon from the prior episode, but basically, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if Wholf knows that the dragon was actually a shape-shifting form of the master. But basically, Torgo looks up and he says, "The master's pet dragon," as he says with his typical stutter. Wholf looks at the dragon, and Torgo says, "The master, this dragon was the pet of the master?" And then Torgo clarifies, he says, "The dragon master together is one." And that's what kind of clicks, that this dragon was indeed the master. So Wholf discovers at this very moment that the dragon that attacked his home village was the master. So he now knows that this building, this structure, this area, the master is responsible for the death of his village, his home, and his parents, most likely. So the master, I'm going to write down here, equals dragon. Oops, not organ. Dragon form equals lineage. So, well, actually, history with the exclamation mark. So as he's talking, as he's looking at the dragon, something happens, something significant, and we're going to roll this on our table. Okay, 10 burden, 66 new. Okay, so a new burden appears. That burden will be Jory. Maybe. Let's roll for it. So is this burden Jory? Because Jory's right outside. I think, well, actually, that is definitely a substantial amount of time for traveling. I have to cheat the system here. So basically, here's what I'm thinking. Jory went all the way back to Haldrith and all the way then traveled to at least a few days of travel to the Temple of Dragon. That at least is a week. So when this is a cop out in some respects, but basically when I'm trying to correct my own mistakes here, if I'm to be honest, tracking the world real time is not necessary, but just to make it make sense to some of you. When Wholf was transported to the Temple of Dragon, there was also a jump in time, so maybe a week ahead. Let's just say. He didn't just instantaneously teleport from the vault to the Temple of Dragon. There was a massive jump in time. Through time. Not like waiting through time. But I guess it is actually depends on how you approach time travel, Back to the Future, or versus the Marvel multiverse concept. Anyways, he did jump in time, so let's just leave it at that. And while he woke up, he appeared, he talked to his parents, the dragon, discovered the outside garden, found the Torgo. Torgo, the new burden is Jory. So Jory does find a way to get inside. Let's write that down. So the new burden is Torgo. I'm sorry, not Torgo. Jory. I've corrected myself, I think. So Jory appears with his scouts to Wholf. Another exclamation mark. Because now this ties in Jory's path thread to Wholf's. They're back together. And so Wholf sees Jory. Maybe the scouts are kind of hidden in the shadows for now, so it's just Jory. Wholf's like, Jory, you found me. And he's happy, like smiling. His arms are open. Jory's walking up impatiently, and he approaches. I think Jory is just pissed off right now. He's probably. Let's ask the Oracle. I don't know. I really don't know if Jory's still in character, or he's going to try to kidnap or try to knock out Wholf to like kidnap him to sorts to bring him back to Ashford. Is Jory still in character? I'm thinking with all of the troubles that are coming back to here or coming to the Temple Dragon has caused the loss of Jory's companions. Even though he probably doesn't care much about them, it's still numbers to him. Let's say 60% chance that Jory remains in character. That's a yes. Okay, so 42 is a good yes. That's an average decent yes. Okay, so Jory is in character. The scouts are in the shadows, out of sight, out of mind. Jory approaches calmly to let me correct myself in the writing. Jory is in character. So Jory, he's in character, all caps, and his scouts are in the shadows, being observant. Which I always typically assume they are around somewhere. We don't have to write it down in every single line. But basically, Jory, he slams his staff. He's, I've been looking for you, my friend. Where have you been? Like, what happened? And then Wholf kind of Wholf tells him what happened. And then Wholf starts to divulge the information regarding his parents popping up and this area, this place, the master, the ghost. Now, when Wholf mentions Torgo behind him, he looks back. Torgo's gone, even to Wholf. And Jory's looking around like, what are you talking about? He says, there was a spirit here, a bound spirit to this area, some kind of servant talking about the master. Now, Jory, in character, can probably still equally have knowledge of the master, to his respect. He probably should use that information he knows from his, alternate identity to warn Wholf of. So Jory plays dumb, maybe. He says, the master. Are we talking about the great tyrant threat from 30 years ago? The Great War? Like, I don't know. We'll get to that later, but basically some big war, some big conqueror, like Napoleon or something to that extent, a tyrant of sorts. And Jory knows what this place knows. This is the Temple of Dragon, but I think Wholf has never really been here. But he knows this is like the place he needs to be. So he says, "Yeah, this belongs to the master. I know I've heard stories about the master. He's dangerous, a tyrant, kills, slaughters, pillages, everything you think of to claim land. And then this is his Temple of Dragon." He turns around and points at the dragon like that dragon is the master. That was his form. Wholf mentions that in his memories and flashback, he saw the dragon destroying his village. So that's actually new information to Jory. I don't know if Jory actually knew that the master was a shapeshifter. So let's ask the Oracle. Does Jory know about the shapeshifting capabilities of the master? I want to say 25% chance. Oh, that's a strong no. That's a borderline strong no. So not only did not only did he not know that the master is a shapeshifter, but that was a dragon. So Jory sees the dragon that's kind of, he saw it the entire time in the room, but like to see it close, he's like, magnificent. Is he's kind of, his lust for, treasures and artifacts. He sees this giant dragon. He's like, how magnificent. And Wholf is kind of suspicious to a degree, but he does agree. I guess that's a big dragon, but that dragon killed my family. And Jory's like, oh yes, of course, that's tragic. But we have to go back to the village, Wholf, the vault. What we need to find out what happened back there. So Jory's using his the history of being, through the adventures of Wholf, and the Dark Realm. So Jory's a companion. He wants to, help Wholf out. So that doesn't exactly ring any bells, suspicion bells for Wholf. Wholf is like, you're right, but this place, we have so much access to everything in here. We can learn about my past. We can learn about maybe what exactly happened, why the master attacked. And while they're chit chatting, I'm going to say something significant happens again. So Jory and Wholf are talking about what to do next, planning. Like so, suddenly, I'm gonna have to probably roll for this, but basically, um, I can either just decide something happens, or I feel like rolling for it too, or I feel like rolling for it. Let's see what happens. Action and descriptor 76. NPC. Uh oh. Okay, that was perfect. 19. Dark. Holy, excuse my French, but holy shit. NPC Dark. You guys know exactly what's going to happen here. So, star, let's see, NPC Dark. The room turns. Oh, you know what? I'll pause the video just for a second. My apologies, the camera was a little dim, so brighten that up a bit. Okay. Guess who shows up to the party? This isn't Torgo. This is the Master. So the room turns dark, cold. Any shutters, any windows open, slammed closed. Air remains still stagnant. The doors that Jory walked through shudder. The dragon closes behind the little archway. And suddenly they start to feel this rumbling. And the dragon starts to move ever so slightly as it starts to break out of its cocoon of cement, of stone. It starts to move its wings. This giant red dragon, classic and classic D&D dragon starts to turn around. Let's write that down. So the dragon starts to take form. Dragon, the statue, I should say, starts to take form. It breaks out of its shell and reveals itself to be this massive dragon, alive right in front of it. This dragon, though, looks alive. It's not a carcass of a dragon. It's not dead. This is a fully living, breathing dragon. It steps onto the ground. The stones, the statue previously formed, breaks apart and crumbles beneath it. And Jory and Wholf are backing up in fear and horror as they see this massive dragon. The dragons haven't, like I hinted this before, the dragons have not been seen in this realm for 30 plus years since the initial strike. And as the dragon steps in front of them, the dragon says, "Who dares awakens me?" As it looks right at Wholf and Jory, and they are pissing their pants in fear. So the dragon speaks, and let's say, yeah, that's it. Yep, the dragon is alive, and there you go. This is going to be absolutely insane. So to conclude for this episode, Jory is here because again of that little cop out plot hack. There was a time jump, so Wholf was at the little ladder end of Jory's quest to the Temple Dragon. But now they approach, now they see the dragon as. Here's what I think. I believe because Wholf teleported in here using that magical artifact, because in story hack, the magical artifact was granted by his parents, and his parents wanted him to discover the Temple Dragon, to defeat the dragon as their son grew older and more mighty and powerful. But because he teleported inside, sensors didn't exactly go off just yet, like the magical sensors. I don't know, like a security system, whatever, from Allstate. But anyways, Jory just bluntly walked right in. So I think Jory's what triggered Mr. Master to awaken himself from his slumber and now is about to approach the two. So Jory initially triggered the dragon's presence to awaken, while Wholf was kind of being a little sneaky, walking around, not really doing much, despite the dragon statue moving. But that didn't awaken. I think Jory, because Jory is a very powerful magic user who's suppressing his might, is probably why maybe that's another good reason. Perhaps that's another good avenue of approach. That Jory's magical prowess, his aura, is what awakened the dragon. It's what awakened the master. The master, just through, he was in slumber. Maybe he was in healing. Maybe he was heavily injured, and he was in healing, as as a statue. But because Jory was there, his magical presence, as he keeps restrained and hidden from Wholf, as he remains in character, in character, he does that so to remain unequal to Wholf, which actually makes Jory seem even more dangerous, per se. So there we go. They are now side by side, facing the master head on, and then that's going to be the next episode. So, as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.